it was, you know, it was $100,000 difference. But in your meeting packet, on page 20 of 25 is the estimation of cost, and the feeling was that we should be fine. It's just a heck of a good bid.
What's under the tarmac in this picture, between the tarmac and the boards?
Nothing.
Nothing?
Tar right
There are
over.
runners that run.
Because that is the cleanest looking lumber.
It was paved when it was newly decked.
Huh, okay, good.
So, clearly this isn't my field of expertise, but why such a giant difference?
Question? No idea.
Well,
I mean, I know have we had Amity do much work for us before? Is this an
Yes.
opportunity? We have.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Did a beautiful job over on Lowell Lake Road for the bridge.
I mean, I'm familiar with Wesley and the crew, and I mean, it sticks out.
Well, and I think that an interesting point is that the engineer's estimate of costs it's close to the middle, let's just say, of the two. I think one is clearly high, and one is clearly low, but the variant from what the engineers say is half of that difference, you know, so it seems extreme, but I think when you compare the two bids, it's extreme, but when you compare the bid to the engineer's estimate, it's half the difference, so, I mean, I think that feels a little bit better, but.
I think one of the other things that came out in the first addendum was the ability to pour the concrete directly against stone and fill,
Yeah.
as opposed to having to form it up. And so there'd be certainly a lot of savings in that.
I think somewhere it said the engineers estimated it was about $1,500 a yard for concrete to be poured in place. And
That's what I'm saying.
if you can pour it right up against dirt, you can buy concrete for less than $200 a yard. So that number was, in the engineer's estimate, was high for that reason. So when
And
you,
that's the big ticket item, 45 grand.
yeah.
I mean, I would hate to think that Amity came in so low that they're gonna get burned.
No, I don't think
Do you know
so.
what I mean? I'd like it to, yes, it seems like a good deal for us, but they are neighbors after all. I would hate for them to.
Could offer Wes more money, I'm sure he'd take it.
Well, I'm not going that far, I'm just talking it out.
I'm fully confident in him.
Yeah, Wes
Well-
does good work.
Oh, I'm confident in Wesley also, like, that's
And
not the
his
issue.
bid,
I
I'm
just-
confident that he's secure, that he's comfortable with
Okay.
his bid.
Okay, good, good,
We got less overhead than Hunter,
right, he's a little more nimble.
smaller crew.
Yep,
Yeah.
okay.
Anyone can make a motion.
I move to accept the bid from Amidon, is it Wesley Amidon or Amidon Construction?
Amity Construction.
Amidon Construction for the temporary repairs of the storm-damaged Cobble Ridge Road Bridge over the West River, and to authorize the town administrator to execute any documents necessary for the hiring of the contractors to provide the necessary services.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I believe the completion date was November
15th.
15th.
Right. Oh, that was small.
We were hoping it was tomorrow, Randy.
But,
I know just in conversation that Wes is available to jump right on this project pretty
I
quickly.
spoke to him today just to get a reality check and saying, is this, you're gonna get it done for this? And he said, yep. And he did mention that because he'll be waiting on the culvert on the other one, so he's got room to jump right at it.
Ahead of the Spring Hill.
Right, and he's thinking also about, one of the things we put out in the addendum was, and got approval from the property owner to allow trucks to come in from the other side through the private property. And he's now Wes was thinking he may not need to do that. You know, if he fixes the Route 100 side, he might be able to just pour right off the deck. You know, our sand trucks go out there, and those are pretty darn heavy, so
Yeah.
that would save a lot of wear and tear, and also a lot of mileage, I think.
Be a good test.
Save
First.
Save some money in the end too, because we gotta fix that trail. The guys were on.
Yeah.
And again, this is a temporary bridge, is that, or a temporary fix?
Well, that's what we're calling it, because the hope is that FEMA will recognize that this is just going to continue to happen over and over, and the real fix through mitigation is to replace the bridge. And the number that V-Trans quoted so far is $5 million.
Yeah.
They didn't say no,
Yeah, hasn't been approved yet, but they have not said no.
Yep.
And they have not seemed to blink.
so we're going to continue to work that. See if we can get it.
We're hoping.
The same bridge has been temporary
Yeah.
since 2011.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, can I just ask one question? Were there any engineering drawings done the last time the bridge went out to build it to state specs, and you don't have to go through that stuff again, or
All been done.
all been done?
Yeah,
that's
we
good
used, we
Yeah.
used those plans and had our engineer revise them. Actually, you can have it's an extra meeting packet that
Oh,
shows.
no, I don't need them, I was just
Oh,
curious
yeah.
as to whether that stuff had been gone through already. Okay,
Like,
good.
here's an example, they just got marked up in red. Everything red is new,
Yep,
and the black is the old,
right,
you know,
Yep.
so we didn't have to reinvent it.
In addition to what that plan shows, there is the beginning of the proposal for the new
For the new
bridge, the
one, yeah.
replacement one, which is a longer span and longer, it's higher and longer, I believe.
so be level with the highway, so you can, because the big concern is.
I don't want to say for
My wife
sure.
tries to pull out with her Subaru, and if the grass is growing up at all, she's pulling out blind. If the snowbanks are high at all, she's pulling out blind. She doesn't know what's coming down the road, so she's already, almost had a few already, so.
Yeah,
You're pulling up a hill, you know, and that far corner that you come around, if there's any trees there at all, you can't see what's even coming down that far of the road, so my pickup I'm fine, because I can see over it, but with her car,
you're level with the guardrail.
that's why I keep calling the state, can you go over the lawn or the grass, or, you know, can you plow the banks down lower, because we just can't
Can't
see,
see,
so.
yeah.
I'm pretty sure the state's recommendation when they told us we needed a longer bridge was to raise
Yeah.
it up some too.
If you're 2 lane,
Actually, I think right now it's 13 foot above water, and I think the recommended is 13 foot
Is it?
above water. But we may not be able to get that,
Yeah.
depending on, because if it's a wider bridge, it's going to be steeper.
Yeah.
And I'm sure we can't deal with that.
Yeah.
Right. I think the one thing that's clear in the new plans is the span, but the elevation, I can't speak.
yeah.
That's still in
It'd
the,
be 2 lane.
still in the planning process, so I can't speak too much
What's
to
that?
that. We're
I'm
still,
sorry, I'm hard of hearing.
yeah, we're still in the planning process.
Oh, okay.
So we
Yeah.
can't really speak too much to it
There's
yet.
no discussion whatsoever on design.
On design,
for long
okay.
term.
Okay.
Not yet.
Okay, I have questions.
All good.
We gotta see if FEMA will approve the funds first.
Yeah, we had hoped to move right on to the permanent one.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it didn't, it wasn't gonna happen that
So if
way
I was to
clearly.
guess, it would probably start in the spring, I mean, the permanent bridge would be starting in the spring, just go through the cross-country trail until it would save the cost of building another temporary bridge.
I
Not
think-
even close. I would think
Yeah.
we're a couple of years out.
Yeah,
Because
but
it
yeah,
has
that's
to be
what I meant. I
designed.
mean, I didn't mean that, but I mean, when it does come along, if it comes along,
A replacement, the process,
you
beginning
would
the process.
probably,
Yeah.
if you just drive through the property instead of putting a temporary bridge up, that would be crazy, you
We
know?
will,
I
that's
think-
the hope, yeah.
Yeah, I think the current bridge could actually be the temporary bridge, maybe,
Mhm.
because of the
Also, you'd
placement
have
of
to
the new
build the
one.
bridge in a different location.
Maybe.
Yep,
I mean, that's a
I mean, it's,
potential.
yeah, it's in the planning stage.
Hopefully, it doesn't require using the private access. That's not part of the plan. That's one thing I would say
Yeah.
for sure.
I'm sure they're probably done with it. I mean, they were gracious enough to.
In an
you know,
emergency situation,
Yeah.
yes, but if we were to plan, we would not include that.
Right. Okay, I'll
No.
comply.
Certainly nice of them to
Yeah.
Yeah.
allow it at that.
We will move on to item 5, new business. 5A, consider request for use of Pingree Park and use of alcoholic beverages in public place. Londonderry Village Marketplace fundraiser for the American Cancer Society at Pingree Park.
You, Terry?
I'm here. Thank you very much.
Bye, Randy, thank
Thanks
you.
for coming.
Good night.
Thank you.
Good night, Randy.
This is Terry Merrill, and I guess you
Hey, Terry.
would speak to it.
Good, how are you?
So every year, the American Cancer Society does October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And so every year, they do a campaign called, it used to be called Real Men Wear Pink. It's now called Men Wear Pink. Associated Grocers of New England, who is the owners of our store, they partner with American Cancer Society, and so the month of October, we do fundraising for an event for the American Cancer Society. One thing we did last year was a cornhole tournament, and it turned out to be phenomenal, and we raised something like $4,200 just in the tournament. From what I hear, it's going to grow this year. So we wanted a new place. Having it in Londonderry meant more to me. We had it in Weston last year. I wanted to have it in Londonderry because of the store and our community. So someone brought up the idea of having a Pingree Park, which I think would be perfect for it. It runs the whole day, and it's a BYOB. We're not going to be serving alcohol. People just bringing it in. And I can tell you from last year, we had no problems whatsoever. You know, people were responsible. No excessive drinking or any of that went on. So I would love to have it at Pingree Park.
You gonna have food and music and stuff, or
What's that?
you gonna have food and music and stuff?
We are gonna have food. Music will probably be just a speaker. I mean, I haven't really, it keeps growing. I'm hoping it keeps growing, and I hope maybe next year we can have music and make it a community event and everything. What I liked about Pingree Park is people bring their kids also, so bring that playground up there would give the kids something to do. So, yeah, I would think it'd be a perfect place for them. We would clean it, you know, take care of it, you know, do whatever you want us to do. We'll make sure that it gets done.
I think that's one of the intended purposes of Pingree
Yeah.
Park, isn't it?
Yep. Did the Parks Board say yay? Were they?
When I came up with the idea, I came to see Kelly, and Kelly said, just fill out this paperwork, and the select board has to okay it. So then Shane had asked me the same question, did you pass it through the park board? I didn't even know there was a park board, so, but Kelly said it would be no problem. It was up to you guys.
I
But
haven't heard any objection from anyone. So.
Sounds like a good use and a great cause. Yeah.
Anyone care to make a
No.
motion?
Just a quick question. Recently, there was a similar event, let's just say, and I don't know if there's a comparison size and scale wise to know if there's any need for extra parking or police presence or anything like that.
I don't think it's gonna be that big. From
Well,
what I hear I didn't go to the music festival, but I heard people were parking as far away as Mike and Tammy's, and it was packed, and I really don't see it being that big this year.
Yep, and the only reason I mentioned it was because, I mean, if you thought it was necessary, you know, maybe we tack something onto it, but if not, we don't need to, so.
Because we could always use our parking lot, the village marketplace parking lot. And if it, you know, if you feel like we do need police presence, I don't think we will. but
I think it was more for
Crossing the road.
traffic control, really. And if if that was like a shuttle bus kind of thing, so there were gonna be cars arriving and being directed to go and park somewhere, you know, so there's a purpose for it.
Yeah.
If you're not doing a shuttle bus or anything like that, it's probably not that necessary.
Yeah, I don't foresee that being
Okay.
an issue.
It says that your hours are 8 AM to 8 PM.
Yeah, will it last that long? Probably not.
Okay.
But I'd rather
Dark.
say 8 PM and get done at 6 than say 6 PM and get done at 8,
Right.
you know. Last year, it was over with, we started at 8 o'clock, it was over with by 4:35. I expect more teams. We had 22 teams last year that played.
Nice.
And this year, we're looking at maybe anywhere between 36 and 40.
Wow. That's great.
Great, yeah.
My only question is, and forgive me that I'm not as familiar as I probably should be, but the hours for park.
Are they
occupancy,
dawn
is
to
it dawn
dusk?
to dusk?
My boys, no.
So, I mean, maybe the application should just say 8 AM to dusk. Just so we're not extending the hours of the park, it's all
Within the normal
the
hours.
normal operating hours. Plus, I mean, it's dark by 8 o'clock now anyway, so unless you have lights, it's
Yeah.
probably not happening anyhow.
And I obviously can't throw cornhole bags after dark.
Right,
We don't have lights on our board, so.
Yeah.
Headlamps.
Now with horseshoes, you could have used paper plate.
Good.
Anyone care to make the motion?
I'll make it. I move to authorize the use of Pingree Park by and grant a permit allowing the use and consumption of alcoholic beverages to the Londonderry Village Market for an American Cancer Society fundraiser event on Sunday, October 15th, 2023, from 8 AM to dusk, subject to the conditions that 1, the permittee shall adhere to all local regulations and ordinances, including the town's ordinance related to the use of alcoholic beverages in public places and the town's facility use policy, and 2, provision prior to the event of an acceptable certificate of insurance indicating adequate liability insurance and which names the town as additional insured.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
aye.
And that's October 15th from 8 AM to dusk.
Thank you.
Good luck, Terry.
So they
Get your
can-
teams together,
Yeah.
$80,
Yeah.
$80 to join.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great, thank you.
Terry?
Wait for Shane so you can write his notes down. Ready for another 6-hour day on Wednesday?
I'm hoping we can keep it to that. We got a few extra items on there.
All right, moving on to item 7, old business. 7A is consideration of the proposed zoning permit application for new sign for the pollinator garden at the Proudy property.
So I'm a little confused by this. First of all, I didn't know this was coming to the select board. Maybe it was a miscommunication. It's my understanding that this would go to the DRB, or the zoning question, so I didn't know it was going to come here, but what I really don't understand is why this got questioned over the cost. You know, first of all, I misquoted. There were two signs, and this was the more expensive sign. The actual cost is more like $400. But regardless, we have 3 budgets. We have lots of money. Why would you hold this up over the cost?
Well, this year, our budget is shot, probably.
Well, maybe yours is, but ours isn't. We have a lot of money.
I think the question came up, what wasn't really about the dollar amount, it was about the source, if it was coming from the conservation budget, or if it was something it wasn't clear, I guess. I think that was my feeling.
Why keep kicking the can down the road on stuff? All you had to do was give us a provisional approval based on our funding, however we were going to fund it. You know, why turn it into a whole other meeting and a whole other thing? All you had to do is say, okay, fine, if you have the money, pay for it. If not, then you don't get it. It's efficiency. There's no need to keep kicking the can down the road and having meetings over and over. So anyway, yeah, we had lots of money. We can afford this. I'll pay for it out of my own pocket if I had to, but we can afford this. So if the money was the issue, that's really off the table.
What does the sign look like?
Well, what happened is that there are two sign designs. I have a picture I can show you. And the first one, it turns out the current zoning regulation is too big under the current zoning regulation. Under the current zoning regulation, it has to be 6 square feet, which ends up being 6 feet by 1 foot, one line. Our original sign was a lot bigger. So what we decided to do, because we wanted to get this done, was we had a smaller sign made up, and we thought that we would just use that until the new zoning rules, which would have then allowed the larger sign. But at any rate, let me find you the sign.
Erwin, are these signs that the funders of this project want each locale to put up so that people understand how this is part of a large initiative?
No, Martha, not at all. What they fund is they fund the planting of the pollinator garden. That's what they do. So we on our own felt that it was a beautiful thing, and people are noticing it from the roadside. And it's our, excuse me, it's our plan to make it a town thing, and with a bench and with educational stuff in there, so people can come in and enjoy it and learn from it. So yeah, the original Beat the Change organization, they don't really get involved in any of this anymore.
So they don't get any credit for anything other than that they planted it?
Yeah, and the bigger sign does acknowledge that.
I think that was another thing that there was a little bit of confusion about in the request, was that none of us recalled the sign being part of the original thing, so it was just, it felt like the request for the sign was a little bit out of the blue, is why we didn't just push it through. Not that anybody, or not that I personally, anybody was totally against it, it just seemed like it wasn't part of the original proposal, so.
Well, anyway, this was the original sign. There's a Walt Disney on there to give you a sense of perspective. So it says Londonderry Pollinator Garden, sponsored by Be the Change and the Londonderry Conservation Commission. So that's the original sign.
That's who should be paying for the sign now.
Sorry?
That's who should be paying for the sign now. The people that are taking the credit on the sign.
Well, they had a role. I mean, we're all
Well,
taking,
the role isn't
we're
done.
taking the credit too. It's our land, and
I don't think their role is finished.
Sorry?
I don't think their role is done. I think they should supply the sign.
Is there, there's another question.
But that's not the, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry. So
that's-
this was the sign that doesn't
But that's
meet the
not-
zoning standard.
That's not going to be the temporary sign.
Right.
Would it be,
This is the sign.
just from the standpoint, and maybe Martha, you might have some information about the signs that went
Thank
up
you.
saying, "Welcome to Londonderry." There was a good deal of thought put into like sort of the rebranding possibly, or just more simply, just like the font that was
Right,
chosen
right,
for
yep.
it. I mean, is there any, are we picking that font as our, is that what
It's
London,
to-
the
I mean,
face of
that's
Londonderry
totally up to
now?
you guys. The only reason we wanted all the signs in those 4 entrances to be consistent was they're doing the same thing in each place.
Right,
This would be sort of off the mark. I would not consider that, and I don't think that anything in design-wise that's on those signs that we did for the entrances needs to be carried forward. I mean, you could, it looks like the color might be the same, but
right, I was only bringing it up from the
Yeah.
standpoint of that consistency.
there's no purpose in us trying to perpetuate that design standard, if you will.
Well, it might be a consideration, if we do add
Start to have
things.
signs all.
Well, just
Yeah.
start to have consistency
Town
with that kind of stuff,
yeah.
because, and maybe we haven't picked one yet, but I'm just saying, I think that's important as you grow to
Sure.
not have 10 different faces, for the same.
I'm curious, Erwin, is
I agree with that.
Rick McDonough doing this signage work for you? He does Tapestries, that's the name of his company.
Is he the one that made the sign, town signs?
Yes.
No, actually, his estimate was a lot higher.
Mhm.
We're using someone in Manchester, Frank. something.
Oh,
I think Taylor brings up a good point, though, that as we're trying to remain consistent with an identity, little things like that really do make a difference, and it might be subliminal, more so than us having meetings about it, but, I mean, people start to recognize a font or a color or a shape or...
People driving by from somewhere else might say,
Yes.
oh, that must be town property, if it's
Right.
the same sign.
Right.
If it's different, they might
Pay for
just
the
blow right
sign.
by and not even,
Well, the Conservation Commission is part of the town of Londonderry, so they could pay for the sign, and it can still match. That can just be a standard. If it's something, and we don't have to kick it around tonight, but I think it's
Yeah.
something that we should all noodle around, because maybe that's another way to remain relevant.
I think I was at one point working on with Esther, but coming up with a town logo or town seal or something like that, which we just don't have. And I assembled a collection of all the towns, not all, many different town seals and signs that other communities in Vermont and New Hampshire have. And it's really probably something that, from a marketing standpoint, like one Londonderry or whoever, somebody could take that as a project and come up with something that is an identifier for the town. Because if you look at our, this is our letterhead.
yeah.
That's it. And
That's a letterhead?
that's it, and that's what we got. And
I think a lot of
They
people
look
in
great,
town
and-
take, there are a lot of people that take pride in our community, and I think having something that's consistent and recognizable is worthwhile for that reason, that, if somebody can see it on a piece of paper, see it on a sign, have a, it could be on our employees'
on our hats.
clothing or
Right,
hats
yeah,
or whatever. Yeah, I
That'd be a
mean,
great idea.
not that we're really highly marketing ourselves, but I think that consistency just, it makes it more legitimate. And
Basically, every other town has it.
And I will say that takes a fair amount of work to do that, because you want sign off, you want everything. I don't want to hold Irwin's group up, and I think
No.
maybe if Irwin thought about it, maybe wanted the sign maker you're working with to perhaps look at the font that Rick McDonough has for those town signs and see if there's maybe, some consistency, that'd be great, but I wouldn't hold you to it, because I think it's a bigger task to create a town logo and all that kind of.
yeah, not suggesting it has to.
I agree. Plus, this is temporary. It's a temporary sign, so it's not
So
the,
we're gonna
This
buy
is just
two
for
signs.
submittal of the zoning permit, right?
So my concern
Because
here
we're in the-
is this pollinator place might not be there for very long. Stuff is gonna be going there. We might have to move the firehouse. It's probably a good idea to move this firehouse. That's the only place for it to go.
well, yes, but we can
So why
install
do
the
we-
sign,
Yeah,
and,
and
I mean, the sign, it's $800 from the
It's not,
conservation.
it's four, it was four, the bigger sign was 800, this sign's 400.
So
Even
four-
so, yeah.
$400, I mean, it's less than $1,000 to spend to mark a spot that should be recognized.
I see it as a waste of taxpayer dollars.
I mean, I think we could talk about a lot of things that could be deemed a waste of taxpayer dollars. I think that this baby's born,
I think they're buying two signs,
it's already
a
planted.
temporary and then buying another one. is Definitely a waste of
So we can
taxpayer money.
we can change the motion to say that he'll have to come back to approve that second sign, and then we can discuss it further then. But I think this project is completed for the most part, and it ought to be recognized for what it is. And I think that Be the Change was probably expecting it, even though it wasn't part of their agreement and they weren't paying for the sign, but I think it was probably their hope that it was recognized so that it was able to point to all the other towns who are participating in this project too.
I think it's a giant waste of money.
I don't agree.
I don't agree either. I think it's legit, and I think it's an appropriate recognition of that project. And if in a year or in 2 years you have to move the fire station, that's fine.
I have a question now. What's there now looks very nice. Is that all gonna die back and be nothing but rocks again in the spring?
No, in the spring, I mean, there's a combination of annuals and perennials in there. Most of the perennials haven't really come up yet, but it will.
Because before anything came up, it was just a field of rocks.
Right. Yeah, so it was, prior to being seeded, it was plowed twice, and then it was seeded. So it's good ground, it's relatively free of weeds, and it should keep going.
It's not going to be cut back, correct?
No.
No, so what'll happen, Jim, is that, it's great for the birds and for seeds and for mice
Jim
and
doesn't have to
rodents.
look at the rocks.
You won't. It'll look like a field, yes.
I still don't think we should pay for the sign.
Nope. What's gonna happen is it's gonna look like the rest of the Crowley property, eventually all that. Those weeds are gonna get right in that, and it's just gonna look the same.
Well, we hope not, but right now it brings a lot of joy to people. I mean, a lot of people tell me they drove by it, what is that? What is that? And the reason why we didn't get this out earlier was, first we wanted to see whether it was gonna really come in. And then I had some issues with another sign maker who kept me hanging, and then we got to this point.
Is there any potential that the temporary sign would become permanent if there were other plans developing, just say with the fire department move or anything like that? I mean, are you like on the hook for the second sign already, or is there,
No.
this is just
They're not on the hook for anything.
step one?
In my opinion, this is the completion of the project. So, part of the
We have
project
the
was
budget
to
for it,
plow the field, seed it. Like, to me, marking it as what we've already approved was allowed to happen is appropriate. It means it's the end.
Right, and I don't think this
It doesn't
board,
sound like it's the end, they want a bench there and stuff. It's not
Tom,
nearly
take it
close to
one
the
we're
end.
talking about a sign right now. So
But
I am talking
It's not
about
the
a
end of this
sign.
project.
This is zoning regulation application to comply with zoning rules. Why are other issues like this being even brought in?
I don't think the select board goes through every item that the beautification committee spends its money on, which is a similar thing. I mean, you will allocate dollars to a commission in order to do their business, right, for the town. We don't check, we don't literally approve the itemized budgets of those commissions. They're allowed to do what they feel they need to do to conduct their work. So I agree, this is a permit request, end of story. This is not, are we gonna spend 400 on this or 800 on that by the Conservation Commission?
On the basis of this, if there's something else that's going on, you should tell me, but as far as I'm concerned, this is a zoning permit application. Do we comply with the zoning bylaws in having the sign? And that should be no other discussion here.
There's no money mentioned here, so who
It's
pays
town
for
funds
it?
being spent, so it's like.
But that's not a zoning question. If you want to deny us the use of our own budget for conservation issues, that's a different issue.
And I think that's what it is. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're first.
In that, if it's a town application, if it's related to town property, only the select board can authorize submission of an application. So they authorize me to sign it, or they authorize somebody else, but you and I can't just put in file a zoning permit, because we're not authorized to do that. So that's why it's here.
Well, I understand that.
Yeah.
But now that it's here, it should be judged on the basis of zoning laws, not on the basis of how we spend our
No,
money.
not at all, because the select board has nothing to do with zoning. That's the zoning administrator. So as soon as Will gets it, he makes a decision whether or not it meets the regulations or doesn't. If it does, he issues a permit. If it doesn't, he doesn't issue a permit. So this is not a land use decision.
This is the authorization
This
for the
is the
submittal
financial
of the permit application. Really.
So in my
we'll revisit
opinion,
this again.
Well, no, will. Once
Will.
once we approve the submittal of the form.
Well, Will isn't going to approve us paying for that sign.
so, may I speak, Tom? So in my opinion, the only thing we should be asking is, does the Conservation Commission have the money to pay for this sign? And if his answer is yes, then it's done, because the taxpayers have already voted on the budget, and the Conservation Commission's money was in the budget. If the townspeople think it's a waste of money, waste of their tax money, then they can vote the budget down next year, and specifically ask to have the Conservation Commission's budget reduced, in my opinion. I mean, I'm 30,000 feet, not 10 feet.
Just on municipal budgets, the voters do set the bottom line, but the select board can change budget lines however it sees fit.
Yes.
by vote.
In the midst of the budget year?
Absolutely, yes.
Yes.
Because again, the voters, they vote on a budget bottom line.
That's why I'm saying our budget is shot.
They do vote on a budget bottom line, however, their
budget is
impression, if they look in the town booklet, is that the money's going to be spent where it is allocated. Yes, we do have that right, school boards, school budgets, everyone has a right to just spend the money on the bottom line and to rob from Peter to pay Paul and move it all around, it's a shell game. But the taxpayers are still under the impression that the lines that they're going through before town meeting, that the money's going to be spent generally that way.
Well, I would also add that one of our budgets is actually a fund. We have a fund for conservation purposes that does not come out of the annual budget. So anything that we spend out of that fund doesn't even affect the budget.
Are you using that fund?
Well, we're using it now.
Are you using that fund for the sign?
We can.
That's all I'm asking.
I mean, if it's a problem for us to use our operating budget for the sign, we can use our conservation fund for it.
I think this
There
is
we go.
petty.
Right, and
I really think
this should
this is
have been
petty.
hashed out when the whole proposal was put in place. I was not here then, so I don't.
There
know
was
that.
nothing mentioned of a sign or who was going to pay for it.
I get that, but if you have
We
an
rent the
issue,
property to them,
if
we
you have an issue
did
with
the use
the,
of the property, that was our contribution. Past that was in Irwin's hands.
well, so note to self for next time the Conservation Commission or the Beautification Commission comes in with a project, make sure you itemize everything you're going to spend it on. Yes.
Make sure you tell us up front.
Well, that's what I'm saying, make sure it's itemized as to what you're going to spend your money on.
We
So
didn't,
that,
we didn't plan this, you know, we didn't say,
No,
let's do
she's
this now.
taking, she's
and let's-
taking me out of context. You have a budget, you have the money, you want the sign. What else do we need to say? Let him have his permit, let him buy his sign. Right, Tom? If we don't pay for it,
Town's paying for it one way or another.
Well,
You have a fund
no,
project.
conservation fund is our fund that we put together, and it's not, I mean, you.
It
the
gets
town
funded
is-
by the town.
It's not, no, it's not funded by
No.
the town. It's funded by logging revenues on properties that we manage for the town.
So it's funded by the town.
Okay, you can interpret it that way, but the point is it's not going anywhere
The
else.
town owns the trees. The money comes from the trees. It's town money.
Right, but it's money allocated for conservation purposes, not for any
Yeah.
other purpose.
Go ahead.
I would just like to say that it's difficulties like this conversation and the going around and around and around that makes it uncomfortable and also makes it preventative for people in the town to come to us, to talk to us about bettering the town. So we should just think about that. We tend to put up a lot of roadblocks and a lot of hurdles for people to go through for improvements, and it bums me out.
I'm sitting here watching the bills come in. My
Tom,
budget is
I'm
shot.
sure you do, Tom. I'm sure that you are.
Shocked.
And we're all shocked. And yes, I know the budgets are blown, and I know that this disaster is going to come back and haunt us. But we have a history of having a level budget, and we're proud of that. We're so proud that we keep our budget level year after year after year. But you know what happens? When expenses come in and the budget suddenly gets very high one year, everyone comes looking at us. We're not making improvements to the town. The budget should be going up each year as we're improving things and making repairs. And we're so proud to say we're not raising the budget, or it's very small. It needs to all be measurable to what is happening.
Like, just good on that. The paving budget's goes up $40,000 every year in keeping with our capital plan. So we are making some changes to address things that haven't been addressed in the past. So the budget has gone up, concomitant with inflation and, other rising prices. So I don't think we're stuck. I think, in fact, we're making adjustments.
Yes, to
Well, it's
roads.
sort of, yeah, cost of
Yeah, and
credit.
some of those.
Yeah.
Yes, but we're
Rather than
not.
enhancement.
We're not enhancing. We're not looking, we don't have the forward thinking to make the enhancements that could be approved as easily as the road improvements are. This isn't what we should be talking about. So this is a special meeting. If somebody wants to make a motion, I mean, I think I've said what I need to say, so.
Yeah, I'm fine with it myself.
Anyone care to make the motion?
I move to authorize the submittal of a zoning permit application related to signage for the pollinator garden on the town-owned Proudy property, and authorize the town administrator to sign the application on behalf of the town.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Erwin.
Let's take Gloucester.
I move to adjourn.
Second that one.
All those in favor?
Aye. Jim, you should have brought the dog.
The dog is on vacation.